In this demonstration, I'm going to show you a painting using the Alla Prima approach, which is essentially an Italian phrase that means at first attempt, and it refers to a wet-on-wet technique whereby the painting is done in a single sitting. So in this case, this painting was created in about an hour and a half, and some parts of this video are sped up just to move things along, but I thought I would give you a nice glimpse into some of the process and how quickly and efficiently this technique works. For this painting, I used an all-over burnt sienna color. In this case, I'm using the Gamblin brand and a beautiful transparent earth orange. And then I wiped it with just a workshop towel. Nothing on the towel, just sort of embedding the pigment in a little bit to the canvas surface and creating an all-over even tone. I wiped away the highlights and added a little bit of a permanent red mixed with an alizarin crimson color. And then I added some sap green and some hooker's green dark. And because the paint is still wet, I was able to wipe away more highlights. I'm just doing that with a workshop paper towel. If I need to wipe away more than just to a lighter tone of canvas, I can actually put a little bit of mineral spirits on the towel to create brighter highlights, and this removes a little bit more of the paint. Here I'm adding in some darker hooker's green dark and just blending in with the existing color. This is still very much an Alla Prima. Everything is still very wet and the blending is quite effortless. I'm using a medium filbert brush. You could also use a phthalo green, and because it's being mixed with the cooler red tones, it actually takes on a very, very dark green. Now I'm applying a slightly more saturated crimson color, and there you see when it integrates with that bluey green, it almost takes on a violet or like a dark cranberry color. So now I'm just beginning to sketch in the skeleton of the supporting branches using a smaller filbert brush. I really like the filbert brushes. I find that they have a sort of perfect quality of line, and I can use the edge of them like I would a flat, but then I've got the rounded tip almost like a round brush. So for me, it's like the perfect hybrid between the two shapes. Still continuing to kind of lightly sketch out the branches. And this isn't the final color. I'll certainly be building on top of this, but this gives us a nice foundation, and this will be an easy color to wipe away if I need to. So here I'm just building slightly deeper values of the same color and kind of smooshing or fluffing it together with the underlying toned areas of the apples. Now I've got a little bit of violet on my brush. I tend to use a dioxine violet, and starting to build in more shadowy tones, and then the little dimple and stem of the apple, just kind of blobbing it in, nothing too specific right now. The violet's also going to be a really nice shadow color for the branches. So I've applied bigger masses of the phthalo green or the hooker's green dark, and I continue to kind of flip-flop between adding darker masses and then removing highlights. Still using my paper towel here. I've added a little bit of sap green and a leaf green, and I've blended that in with the paper towel. As well, I've lifted smaller highlights out with a sharper tool, simply using a Q-tip. Building much darker darks, same colors, no new colors being introduced. It's the phthalo green, a little bit of violet, and the sap green and leaf green. Here you can see a close-up of the darker masses. Things aren't super tight at this point, but we're nearing the finish line. So now I begin sharpening up edges, creating slightly more specific shapes. Using a cooler color. I like to start my paintings with the warm tones and then build my way to darker, cooler colors. I find it much easier to control this way. I find it easier also to apply cool colors on top of warm colors. The warm colors on top of cool tend to be a little less visible. So I'm using my rag here almost as a tool to blend and not just wipe away, but also with less pressure, just kind of fluffing the colors together, and that just blends them up a little bit. So rather than just focusing on using the paper towel as an eraser, we can almost use it as we would a brush. The paint is very thin, so it's easy to wipe away or to kind of integrate into connecting shapes. Now I'm working with a slightly more opaque color. I wanted a cooler pink here to give us that kind of waxy, frosty skin on the apple. So I'm using the crimson color with a little bit of white. And so you can see it takes on a much cooler effect, and that will give us that kind of hazy highlight. And the cooler, more opaque pink also, while I am sketching on the highlights, it gives a kind of that neat matte kind of look or satin look to the apples. And I'm just fluffing it here with a clean, damp filbert. So I can have a little bit of solvent on it if I need to fluff it together, but not too much, otherwise it will just remove the paint. Now I'm going back to brighter, not full on whites, but a slightly brighter pink tone that verges on being white. So you can see it on the other apple here, how it's still very much in the pink family. Softening edges, fluffing things together. Now I'm going in with just kind of a neutral, almost a brownish red. So using a little bit of burnt sienna with a cadmium red or permanent red, whichever hot color of red that you like to use. Here I'm using the leaf green with a little bit of cadmium yellow light and a bit of white mixed together. And again, much like that bright, cool pink, this bright, cool green really makes the highlights pop. And it's a little bit more opaque, having added the white to it. Using that same green mixture, the leaf green with a little bit of white and a little bit of cadmium yellow light, just creating a little bit more of that frosty kind of green look. Blending up any hard edges at this point. We want to keep some, but I also want to make sure that my strokes are rounded. Everything, as you may have noticed, points towards the stem or like the center, the heart of the apple. So I'm curving around the contours of the apple because they're rounded, but then I brush towards the stem so that almost as if it had a nap or a texture to it, and I can just keep radiating those strokes towards the center. Few bright highlights In this case, I am using almost white. It has just a touch of that yellow-green in it. And here I find that white on the bottom left of the apple is just a little bit strong, so I'm going to go in and soften that with a green, and this is almost a sap green with a little bit of that Hooker's Green Dark or phthalo green. Blending that up a little bit. That edge was a bit harsh. So you can see I'm using the softness of that filbert to really blend things up. So there you have it. Very quickly, in about an hour and a half, have created these orchard apples, and I hope that you enjoyed this tutorial and a little glimpse into my process. For the complete list of art tutorials that I have available, visit my website www.crystalbeshara.com/shop videos, or you can check out the vimeo.com/channels/art tutorials website. Thanks for watching, everybody, and happy painting as always. See you the next time.